Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel, that is the R in the RK Stumbling Bear, and I am a reader and a writer. And today I'm also back to do my September wrap-up. I finished 10 books this month, and we're gonna get into it now. The first one I finished was I Am Kiowa by Dustin Stumbling Bear, who is my husband, and I have an interview with him on my channel. So if you want to hear what he thinks and how he approached writing the book, so please go watch the video and hear his own words. But for me, I have read this book many times since I also helped format the book, and I just love how hopeful this is. This is based off of a real event. When Dustin was a 4th grader, alongside his mother and his younger brother, he started doing culture presentations for other students. So this is a 4th grader sharing his Kiowa heritage with 5th graders. I think we really do need more heartwarming stories like this, especially when there are good experiences. I then read Unexpected Witness by MJ Blahart. I read this for the self-published science fiction contest year 4. I knew from the cover that this was going to be a space opera, and that was exactly what I was in the mood for, and I actually read it in 2 days, which is super fast for me. I'm a slow reader. And this follows Jace Rojas, who is a clone, and in this society, after the war that all the clones were made for, the clones have kind of been discarded and looked down upon by general society. Jace witnesses a murder. When the investigator comes, she realizes how accurate his memory is and invites him to come along as a consultant dealing with clones. Because, again, most of society ignores them or doesn't realize that they have their own thoughts and opinions. And the greater mystery in the story does further on the issue of clones. This gave me exactly the space opera vibes I was looking for. The only negative for me is there is a lot of info dumping, where the author is really saying, here's the setup to my world, and then there are several times when characters just sit down and say, how did you get to be here? And they give you their life story history. As a reader, I kind of like that to be more organic. Really find out the backstories of characters when we need to, when it's plot relevant, but at least the author mixed it in so it's happening in a conversation that, in real life we would have with one another. Just you don't have those sort of conversations in books. I really enjoyed the book though. And if you like space opera, again, this is going to tick all those space opera boxes. I then finished Digging for Richard III by Mike Pitts. This is the story of the archaeological dig where they discovered the body of Richard III. Surprise, surprise. And Pitts details even the genesis of the idea, how it came about, who were the people who were pushing for this site to be dug upon, and how even the different departments, the different groups that came together had different goals. There was only really one person who was like, I am wanting to find Richard III's body. Everybody else had their other goals, and they're like, if we find it, great, and if not, that's okay, we can hit our goals as well. It was very interesting, especially getting to read about how with science they were able to determine the exact death of the body, and yeah, it was a lot of fun to read. If you're someone who likes history in general, but likes to see how archaeology and history merge, this is a great book for you. I then read Of Friction by S.J. Lee, and this was another of our self-published science fiction contest books. This one's a military sci-fi set in a dystopian future. I'm not usually a big dystopian fan, but I do like military sci-fi, and I thought that this was accurately portrayed military, and then afterwards I found out that that's because the author has military experience. And in this we are following Sam as her and her brother Scott go to join a unit that's set in the capital to go on a further mission for their government. Her brother Scott has just told her that this is his last mission, and then after that he's retiring, and she's feeling conflicted about that because they have been in a unit for so long together. She can't picture how her military career is going to continue when he's not there. And they're pretty close as siblings. The unit that they join up is sent to South America, and they are looking for rumors of unrest, especially at the time where their government is, there's two factions. They're called the Altereds, and the author explains this in the epilogue. And then there's a radical group as well. And I really enjoyed it. I felt like the interactions between the characters felt real. How the unit is piecing together the information that they're finding while there, everything. And I even cried when the death that pretty much, if you know sci-fi and fantasy, you know that it's going to happen. When it happens, yeah, it caught me. Like, it was set up perfectly. I then read Planet of Lies by Ellie J, which was another sci-fi book from the science fiction self-published contest. This one unfortunately did not work for me, and which I'm very sad, because the premise, the blurb, was like, seemed like it would be right up my alley. But I think that this is where just the pacing was too fast for me. It was hard for me to connect to the main character when she stole out of her own house because she was angry with her partner, and then took off without any supplies. It just didn't seem like a very rational decision for an adult to make. And then, like I said, after that, the pacing just seemed really fast. Like, we find this mythic planet really quickly. And then as soon as the main character hears the story from the natives, immediately she's all in. Yes, this other society is evil, and this is how they've screwed everyone else over in the universe. And that's just kind of how the book continues to go. It doesn't feel like it's actually high stakes. It doesn't feel like the main character is wrestling with anything. It's more that they're just there and the events are happening. And I didn't really see how having the main character there had any real different effect on the events that would have happened otherwise. So unfortunately, this one did not work for me. I then read Dinosaur Sanctuary Volume 5 by Itaro Kinoshita. This is a newer manga where, hey, dinosaurs were discovered and more dinosaurs were figured out, DNA, and now they are in zoos. Not the Jurassic Park type zoos. Suzumi is the main character and is a dino keeper working in a zoo that has seen better days. And it's just a heartwarming story of the keepers who are there because they love their animals. They love the dinosaurs that they're working with, and they want people to see how wonderful they are. So really, it's a love story to dinosaurs. I then picked up my first Courtney Milan book, The Duchess War. I know a lot of people are like, it's fall, that means spooky, horror. But for me, my mind is like, historical romance, please. So finally I broke down and I read some. So in The Duchess War, we have Robert and Minnie, who are the main couple. And this was set in Leicester? I know, I totally butchered that. I don't know how to say it. This is a story that has its roots with industry and how industry is happening. Like, I can tell that Milan knows a lot about this time period. The historical details that are in there aren't overpowering or take away from the story. Instead, they like embrace it and help make it feel like, okay, this could have really happened. And it was also interesting to see the relationship between Robert, who is a duke, and Minnie, who is considered, I guess, middle class. It was interesting to see them. They had to come through their own conflicts of class. But also, I like that Courtney Milan lets people have anxiety and mental health issues and doesn't shy away from it, and brings out how people in this time period would really have worked on these things or not worked on them, as the case might be. And this goes into, I then read The Heiress Effect, which is the second one, which follows Oliver and his love interest is Jane. And I think this one was my favorite, actually, because Jane is just 100% completely herself, outlandish, doesn't even try to merge into society's expectations of her, and I love that. And where you have Oliver, who has learned to contort himself to society's expectations, and so he's like, I can't be in love with her. He's like, I love her, but I can't be with her because she can't help me with the influence that I need for my political career. And he has to get his head out of his ass and realize there are different ways to get things done. And then I read number 3 in the series, The Countess Conspiracy, which the couple for this one was Sebastian and Violet, who you meet in the very first book, and it's kind of very obvious that these two are going to end up together. And in the first 2 books, both when Minnie and Jane meet Violet, they mention her as prickly, but I never felt like that when she was talking. But then when you get to see her side of her, but when you finally get into her head and her perspective, you're like, oh, she's formidable, and that's why people kind of think she's prickly. But the whole secret of book 3, I actually figured out in book 2, and I was kind of like, yeah, I was right, I knew it. And this one was very sweet, especially about dealing with choice and the choices that people make and how they don't have to be the same choices that everyone else makes. I also love the scientist aspect of this story. Like I said, Courtney Milan obviously knows a lot about this time period, and I love the details that are layered in. So I will be reading more Courtney Milan in the future. And then the final book that I finished in the month of October was The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. And this is a standalone fantasy that I am going to call cozy. It has a romantic subplot, but it's not one of the main features. Really, the main feature is Kyla is a librarian. When rebels take over the government and start to burn down the library she works at, she takes some books, her sentient plant assistant, and goes back to the island that she was born on, and is trying to figure out how to have a quiet life, and then starting to remember and relive the memories of when she lived there as a kid with her parents, and then realizing that she can make friends and family. So it's a found family, and realizing that the choices you make really do define who you are, but they also expand your world. Really love this. Also, I think that this is one of the most gorgeous covers I have seen this year. So those are the books that I have read in October. I'm already set up to have a really great November reading month. What was your favorite book of October? I'd love to know. Thank you, and have a great day.